This is going to be part 3. We are just kind of showing through our characters in Blitz, and these are basically all of my saved teams. We just left off with the X-Men. I am going to go now into my 8th save team. And again, it's a bit of a, kind of all homeless characters. Some of them are a little bit more worked up than others. The Gamora, she embarrasses me that she's 84K, but I started playing kind of at the very beginning, and she was kind of a good character back then, not so much anymore. But this is kind of just a hero brawlers team. It is kind of one of my backup war offense teams. I do need to work on them a little bit more. Mainly my Captain Marvel could use some work, and then also my Shield operative. I've never really worked on my Shield characters all that much. And this is kind of, you should probably have, I would say, at least 5 solid war offense teams. And then, if you can have an additional 7 backup teams, that would give you a max of your 12 attacks. And while you're probably not able to do this every war, as that does require, using your resources, having at least, 8 to 9 solid teams is kind of the way to go, because you will always at least get 8 or 9 teams. So this is one of my backup teams. It is just kind of a bunch of hero brawlers, so there really isn't any synergy behind that. The basic, I guess, kind of concept between this team is Captain Marvel by herself is just a really good standalone character. And then Gamora is going to get a little synergy with, basically all the characters except Shield Operative. So Captain Marvel is going to kind of heal herself. Wolverine is going to heal himself. If you do get to the point where there are debuffs, Psylocke kind of dispels those debuffs just a little bit. And if my Shield Operative was built up a little bit more, she would actually do a little bit of healing. But I haven't really worked on her. So I do kind of have to be careful if I am attacking with this team in war. I am not going to go up against any like meta defense teams because they aren't going to be able to handle it. But if I do come across kind of like a hodgepodge defense, and it is within a reasonable power, they can normally kind of handle themselves. They are at 33K, so I mean they're not the weakest team in the world, but they're also not the greatest. The team would be a little bit better if I did beef up my Shield Operative and my Captain Marvel. Those will be in the works. It's just not something I've gotten around to. This next team I'm not even going to touch on, just because they are just some leftover characters, so I just use them primarily for Blitz. Green Goblin at the moment is kind of homeless, and then the rest of these characters are pretty much trash. So really it was just about kind of adding some random characters together. And that was just kind of a Blitz thing. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. Next one I do have up that is an actual, great offensive team is going to be the Power Armor team. And they're going to do really good. They are pretty much just like an AoE powerhouse. And let's do a little bit of a punch up. This is, just shy. This is just about a 40K punch up. So let's go in. They are, a phenomenal AoE team. So anything that there are kind of like a lot of enemies on the field, I think they're going to do fairly well against. They were originally designed, I believe, to be a counter for Hydra, but from a little bit of I honestly don't know if they ever fixed the glitch, but they weren't. Their kit didn't work kind of, I guess, the way it was intended. But so they do really good. Any team that really, I mean, just kind of like AoE. I've been able to use them against the Mercs when it's not. If the Merc team isn't stronger, they seem to do okay. They're just kind of a real big AoE powerhouse. My War Machine in particular is 6 red stars. And I mean, that's just it really, if he gets his AoE off, it pretty much kind of clears the field. They are going to do really well on teams that have a lot of positive buffs. I haven't really seen it done, but I mean, I'd be curious to see how they do with the Marauders. They might be able to counter kind of those positive buffs fairly well. Um, but with those positive buffs, Falcon basically gives everyone speed up, and then there's just so much AOE on the field. So they wipe the floor with defenders pretty quickly. So it's a really nice kind of just AOE team. Like I said, if they have a lot of uh, buffs, it's going to be great because Falcon will get everyone speed up. They can handle debuffs pretty well with rescue. So it's just kind of a really kind of a cool team that I like. I've enjoyed. I'm actually currently working on them right now. Um, so this team is actually not even at its full potential. Like you can see, I mean, War Machine is Gear Tier 13. I am currently working on Ironheart. After that, I believe I will finish up Rescue and then go to Falcon and Iron Man, and that will kind of round this team up. And I'll be really curious to see kind of what they do with their max potential. Oddly enough, I haven't mentioned this yet. Max potential, I would say if you really want to kind of look at a team you really don't start realizing kind of what they're capable. I would say gear tier 12, and then abilities 6, 6, 6, and 4 is really kind of where you start to see a team's potential. Um, you know, um, 4 red stars is kind of the minimum. Next up is defenders. They kind of were one of the old meta defense teams. They still do fairly well on defense, depending on what your roster is looking like and how long you've been playing the game. They are certainly fine on defense. A lot of people have transitioned to having them off defense just because there are so many teams that can kind of wipe the floor with them, and people have been using them now more as a backup offensive team. Um, they don't really. I mean, trying to think. I can't really think of any teams they like perfectly counter anymore. Um, they kind of just are one of those. I would say kind of like mid-tier teams. There's really nothing to write home about. They're not terrible. They're not good. They're just kind of right there. I don't think they're going to be able to handle this fight. They're going to probably get the floor wiped with them. And it's just they're an okay team. I mean, if you have them, it's good. They are not a team I would particularly invest in, especially if you're just starting out or if you're at the early phases of the game. A lot of these characters you will just get kind of organically, and like I said, they really don't particularly counter any of the meta teams right now, so they're not a team I would like really focus on. Like you saw, they got wiped out by pretty much just that was a hero brawlers team, so really nothing even meta, and they weren't even able to handle that. So again, kind of not one of my favorite teams anymore. They just have kind of fallen to the wayside. Um, Moving on down, this is my modified Wave 1 Avengers. Again, they are not what I would say a meta team. They are, I would say, kind of more geared towards they're kind of one of the first teams you are able to get as a new player. So kind of just getting you to that team dynamic. They're not meta per se, but they are kind of like a faux meta, I think, for early gamers. Um, they do work pretty well as a backup offense team, so I do use them for that. I don't really think they particularly counter any teams, but they're just kind of like a really fun team to kind of really learn how to, I would say, kind of like build a team because early people probably have this team with Thor, potentially Iron Man, and then Captain America, Hulk, and then whoever else they kind of have. So it's kind of a really good early team building team. They did get a rework recently, so it has made them a lot more viable. They can be used as a backup offense team. If you're going against a non-meta team, so like you are seeing here, they are handling the Guardians of the Galaxy pretty well. Um, so certainly not the worst team anymore. I would say in the past they probably wouldn't have been able to handle the Guardians, but now with their rework, they do work a lot better together. Ant-Man is the strange addition on the team, and that's just because it doesn't make sense to break up Power Armor or Asgardians, as those teams are, phenomenal with their full characters. So it doesn't make sense to break up, two. kind of not power armor isn't necessarily meta, but I mean it doesn't make sense to break up just two strong teams for a okay team. Um, like I said, this is a great kind of starter team to really just kind of get built. They will do pretty well in early arena. They're going to do pretty well in early raids, and even in early wars. As you kind of get a little further in the game and you do start unlocking more of the meta teams, they will just become probably a backup team for you. But they are definitely a great backup team after the rework. Like I said, prior to the rework, they probably would not have been able to handle the Guardians of the Galaxy, and you see here that they are handling it pretty well. I did just lose Black Widow, but I mean, between the rest of these characters, Groot and Drax are not going to be an issue. Captain America, his block rate becomes, insane the more Wave 1 Avengers there are. Hulk is just kind of taunting, and while he's taunting, he is getting counters. Um, if the enemy is able to get him down to yellow health, his damage becomes insane, and then his taunt at the same time is like self healing. So it is a really kind of cool team. It does get you to kind of play around with kind of team mechanics and just they're just a great starter team for really learning how that stuff works. So I'm just going to finish this fight up, and hopefully we will have time for one other team, and then we will go to the next part. Um, but yeah, so this fight is taking a little bit longer than I personally would have liked. But again, no problems. Like I said, not a meta teams by any means, but they can hold their own against some of the earlier built teams, and they are a great backup offense team. Um, so we will finish up Drax, and then we will go to the next team. So let's pop him off. All right, Drax is dead, and I'm actually going to, let's see who the next team is, and then we will either stop and go to the next part, or I will try to do a little quickie. It'll just depend on who the team is. Um, let's go ahead. We'll stop here, and I will be back with the next part with the mercenaries. So thank you for watching, and look for the next part.